So one thing that I've noticed is a lot of successful entrepreneurs, John D. Rockefeller, Thomas Edison, they all rely on the mastermind principle. And I notice it's something you pay a lot of attention to in your work. Why is that?
You know, to run a business, it gets extremely lonely at the top. Business owners are all the time struggling with things which they can't openly discuss with anybody for various reasons. There is no safe space that they can go and unpack and get insight and support and information and resources. So Mastermind plays that role very, very powerfully. And I've been researching masterminds for very, very many years. And what I found is that once a certain set of principles come together, a mastermind starts to work. And a mastermind is defined as when two or more people come together in a space of harmony, a third mind is born, where you can start accessing insights and ideas and thoughts and different paradigms begin to open up for you, which you can't really access on your own. So a mastermind, all these big successful industrialists, business owners participate in a mastermind because they're able to leverage each other's acumen and the sharpness with which they are able to look at plans and proposals, and that kind of helps them to increase the probability of success, eliminate the blocks, and be able to make things move at a much faster pace. So mastermind principle and the way we work in masterminds is a very deep and integral part of all the work that I do. I've done years and years of research, and the masterminds that we conduct in our programs are amongst the best in this part of the world.
So one of the things I've noticed about masterminds, being in them in the past, is they're not always effective. Accountability was about the only thing that I got from most of them. Your masterminds seem to be different and to be a lot more effective. Why do you think that is?
There are several factors to make a successful mastermind. I'll share two or three of the really, really important ones. First of all, there's a constant training that's required to keep grooming that mastermind, keep taking it to the next level. Number two, confidentiality is key. And what happens in normal masterminds that people come together, is that there's nothing at stake. So you might leak something that happens in that mastermind without meaning to.
Right.
And then that kind of can really unravel everything. The fabric of a mastermind, the fabric of trust is what really makes it work. Now, because this is part of a program, part of a community where, confidentiality is of paramount importance, that one breach and you're permanently out of that community, you're permanently out of that group. And that kind of holds people on course and keeps, confidentiality absolutely, powerful, and, everybody's very, very particular. The third principle is that often in a mastermind, there will be attrition. Somebody moves on, somebody leaves the country, and so on and so forth. So, because this is part of a group and a program, we are constantly able to offer new members in a mastermind to again top them up and make sure that they work, and because they're part of a group, again, they're extremely well graded in terms of like for like, people with very similar challenges and growth cycles of their company. So all of these factors make a mastermind successful. So we pay very, deep and minute attention to make these masterminds work.
So tell me, many programs and business trainings out there talk about growing a company, and they go from zero and getting the company to some level of revenue or growth. One thing I notice with your programs and your work is it's scaling up a company who's hit a stagnation point. So they've grown to a certain level, things are working, and all of a sudden things stop working and they don't know where to go. Why have you decided to focus on companies of that size and in that area?
First of all, let's distinguish what is scaling up. Scaling up is a mindset. So you have a mindset which is a startup mindset versus a scaling up mindset. And people don't realize that for years together, they keep living and dwelling in a startup mindset, and they wonder how come their company is not scaling up. So the first piece of work that we need to do is distinguish what is a startup mindset, what is a scaling up mindset, what are the components of it, and then it opens up new paradigms for them. Now as these paradigms start opening up, they start noticing that one of the biggest issues to scale up a business is aligning their core team. And every single day, the business owner or the CEO comes to work to align their core team on strategies, on tactics, on projects, and it's a constant process. They get tired of it. And whatever they do doesn't really work, with the result that the core team gets into this state of mediocre performance, and that kind of locks up the potential of the business. So in the work that I do, I work with core teams, and the idea is to align the core team in the mindset. So the mindset shifts from startup mindset, survival mindset, to scaling up mindset. And once the alignment pieces start coming together, there's an acceleration that takes place. And that acceleration gets the company off from a stagnating plateau to where the business owner or the CEO wants to go. And he's been struggling, he's frustrated, he's tired. There's a lot of fatigue that is set in. And once the core team and the CEO start waltzing together, then things just start to move. And what you notice is there's a whole scaling up phenomena that gets unleashed.
So for many CEOs and business owners, they often feel like they're the only one who's working in the company, and the team should be helping to drive the business, but they're not always kind of pulling their weight. It's a common phrase that we hear used. Is it the team that needs changing usually, or is it just the fact that the team has not been aligned in the right way?
This is a very interesting question, and really goes way back into the time when everybody in the core team was in the school. So as a student, every student on a daily basis is trying to stay out of academic trouble.
Right.
And the critic can be themselves, can be their parents, can be the teacher, or can be the person who's going to provide admission to them in the college that they want to go or the school that they want to go to. The constant drive is to make that mark happen so that they stay out of trouble. And for the 17, 18 years of their life, on a daily basis, that's all they've been doing. So when they go and join a company, they've changed schools. And instead of the principal that was there, now the business owner or the CEO is the principal.
Right.
And all they're doing is trying to stay out of trouble. And here's the CEO who's trying to align his core team, and here's the core team that's trying to stay out of trouble. And both these are conflicting, endeavors or conflicting jobs that they're doing. So unless there's an appreciation on both sides, and we are able to find out how can we bring alignment of purpose, the alignment of the core team and the CEO, once you get them aligned on scaling up a business, growing the business, accelerating the business, then there's a lot of shift in energy, in approach, in dynamics that starts to show up. But I see, working with organizations across 4 different continents, is irrespective of which company, which sector, which place, the core team is all the time subconsciously trying to stay out of trouble. When you meet them, you talk to them, everything is great. But if you really notice, they're all the time hedging their bets, they are kind of protecting their backside. And here's the CEO who's kind of banging his head on the wall. And and in the midst of all of that, there is progress, there is growth, there is success. But if you really align both the purposes, then there's an effortlessness that comes in to scale up and grow the business.
So say I'm a CEO, I have a core team, and I'm interested in bringing them into a program to help us grow the business. One of the fears that I would have is my team could be resistant to this kind of thing. How do you get the team on board with this kind of training and get us all moving in one direction?
There's no simple answer to that. So the best way for me to answer that question is to say, I listen to what's unfolding there and start engaging people in a conversation and ask them questions for them to start experiencing that this is a safe space for them to open up, and a space of respect and a space of nurturing. And they start talking about small things, and those small things then lead to slightly bigger things. And before we know it, we've got a dialogue that's going around. It's like like logs of wood that you put into a bonfire, and then as they start crackling up, the flame grows, and there's a warmth there. There is a inclusiveness. There's a sense of belonging, and there's safety, and there's no ridicule. When these kind of things they start experiencing, they open up, and it's always about very little things, small things. They don't feel acknowledged. They don't feel appreciated. Right. They don't get a safe place to speak. And once that gets supplied to them, I'm all the constantly looking for listening for what's missing in this team. And once that comes into existence for them, you can't stop these people. And alignment just shows up. So it seems to me that aligning a core team is a default condition, but gets displaced by little things. So my job is to find those little things there and address them and dismantle them and remove them, and the natural alignment between people begins to show up, because we are a community at the end of the day. And as a community, we want to belong, we want to participate, we want to create value, and most important, we want to be part of a winning team. And here there's a platform that they can participate. And then somewhere in the midst of all of that, I pop a question. And the question that I pop is, the sacrifices that your parents, teachers, and ancestors made for you, are you honoring them? And what's the best way in which you can honor them? And the best way in which you can honor them is to create value, participate, hold hands with other people, let the business owner, make a successful business, so then he can start taking care of everybody that's working in the business, the suppliers, the customers, and suddenly we have a community that's working together, playing together, and helping each other grow. And who doesn't want to be part of that?
So many CEOs, I think, feel that they're working way too hard and the team's not pulling their weight. And I've heard you use the phrase, the CEO is not allowed to do any work. What does that mean?
Many years back, I built, owned, and operated a critical care hospital. I found myself in the same space where I was working very long hours, and I had, over 40 people in the top exec. It was a large hospital, critical care hospital, that nobody was pulling their weight. And then I got this thought that I have employed these people and now they've employed me right back.
Right.
And I said, what is my job description? And I found that my job description was that I am the key and the biggest problem solver in my organization. And I love to solve problems. I suddenly realized that I'm an addict. I'm addicted to, the energy that flows into grappling with problems and finding solutions. And it takes hours and hours and hours. What's the end result? The end result is I'm not giving anybody an opportunity to solve problems.
Right.
And then I look at them and say, hey, you guys are not pulling your weight. Damn right. I don't give you an opportunity to pull your weight. So the point is, if we start empowering people, enabling people, and giving them, a way to contribute, a way to participate, what begins to happen is that you start getting a lot of the problems getting solved. And as a check and balance, you can ask people to process whatever problem or issue there is and come up with a solution and share that solution with you. And sometimes there could be A and a B, shall I do this, shall I do that? Come up with that and then ask them to choose one of them and then ask them why. So all the time, constantly, you're coaching them in the criteria
Right.
to take the right decisions, the assumptions to take the right decisions, and create hypothesis and then test that hypothesis. So hypothesis, assumptions, criteria, hypothesis, assumptions, criteria. And as you are working with them, they get to a place where they are able to solve more and more complex problems. And that is really the role of the CEO. So if you really step back and think carefully about this, the context that the CEO brings to that core team is where the problem is. And most CEOs bring a context called, you're not able, I'm able. The moment they flip that context to, you are able, and I'm standing right behind you, take the call. So what if you make a mistake? I'm right behind you. If you don't take a call, you get into trouble. If you take a call and we lose money or something happens, no problem. Learn from it and move on. As long as they're sincere, they're hardworking, they're good people, then this begins to work. So the real secret that solves this whole dynamic is, where are you coming from? Are you coming from, you are able and I'm here standing behind you, or you dumb guy, you're not able and I'm the only guy who can solve the problems? So that's the dynamic that I see, and it's quite strange. So you're the architect of non-performance of your own core team.
So I've heard you talk about scaling up mindset versus startup mindset, and that this is a pivotal shift in growing a company. What is the difference between startup mindset and scaling up mindset?
In a startup mindset, that's the time when business just about starts up. And in that phase, the business owner or the CEO is worried about growing his revenues, controlling his costs, populating teams, hiring people, productivity, and all of these things, which are very, very important to run a business. But if you are stuck in that kind of a mindset, and that's all you're doing, then you're never going to get into a scaling up your business kind of a phenomena. Because a startup mindset locks you into incremental growth, and you continue in that trajectory. A scaling up mindset, you start addressing different aspects. So you take up something like doubling, and you start applying the principle of doubling to everything that's there in your business. Doubling my revenues, doubling my customer base, doubling my gross margin, doubling, and wherever you can, you start seeing how you can start to double. So the next is valuation. And most business owners are not thinking about growing valuation of their company. They want it. But what are the mechanics of valuation? So valuation basically comes from a very simple, multiple of your net profit. So if you want to exit your business, then you can safely assume that the investor will want at least a 20% return on his investment. So the net profit that you are able to demonstrate, 5 times of that is the value of your business.
Right.
So now what are all the elements that will help to increase your net profit, which is away from focusing on top line growth and cost and all the rest of it. As you start focusing on the net profit, you'll be amazed to see so many of your decisions getting refined and moving in a different direction. The third element is execution. And, mastering how results are created. So results is a function of an active intention. And from their active intention, there's a bunch of action that the teams take, and the results flow from the actions. The results only come from actions. They don't come from planning. They don't come from thinking. They don't come from meetings. They don't come from spreadsheets. They don't come from any other place except an action. So footballer, he is standing in front of the ball in a penalty shot and is thinking about taking that shot. The thinking doesn't produce the goal. He confers with his team members. The conference doesn't produce the goal. None of that produces the goal. It's only the kick that's going to produce the goal. It's action that produces results. So the quality of actions that your organization is taking. So once you start focusing on those actions and refining those actions, and that's where coaching comes into existence. Then why does a footballer need to go to a coach? Is that the coach helps him to refine the effectiveness of his actions, the efficiency of his actions, so that with the same amount of effort, his results start to grow. So these are the different elements that once you start, grappling with this, your mindset shifts from a startup mindset to a scaling up mindset. And once the scaling up mindset sets in, your business slowly starts to scale up. Because without that mindset forming, there is no way in which your business is going to scale up. It's all the time going to get locked into working on just growing incrementally. Because your focus is on how do I grow my revenue, how do I control my cost and all the rest of it. Which is great, do it. But when you move to scaling up mindset, all of these things get amplified and things start to move in a different way.
So a big part of the work that you do with CEOs is about cash generation. Can you share something about that with us?
A farmer came to me once and he said, "Sir, for the last 3 years, I've been planting these robust mango seeds, but every time I'm getting oranges. And I wonder, what is it that I'm doing wrong? Am I watering the plants wrong? Am I manuring them wrong? What's going on? Every year is the same story. I plant mango seeds, but I'm getting oranges." This sounds really funny.
Yeah.
But I see business owners whine in pretty much the same thing. I want profits, I want to generate cash, but I'm not able to do it. Well, buddy, check your seed. You think it's a mango seed and it's producing oranges and all you're doing is whining. So when we have this conversation on the seed leads to conversations, leads to actions, leads to results. So it's that hierarchy. And if you're not getting the results that you want, go check your seed. And usually the seed to the utter amazement of business owners is a seed of how do I stay in business? How do I survive in business? How do I balance my cash flows? So this dynamic is about cash flows. It's about maintenance. It's about topping up. It's about balancing. But if you really look at what is new, creating, then it comes into a domain called cash generation. So there's cash generation or cash flow management. These are two different distinctions. And most people, without their realizing it, are caught up in cash flow management as opposed to cash generation. Because cash generation is about something that's new, something that's, you're creating innovations, all the rest of the elements which bring something new into existence. So this conversation begins to polarize the thinking in business owners, and then we do a lot of practical work to make sure that, of course, the cash flow balancing is required. Without that, you'll go bankrupt. But that's not the main reason why you're running your business. You're running your business to grow cash. Yeah. You're running your business to generate cash. And what are the new things that you're doing? And those new things, once they start doing, they start noticing cash flow starting to generate. So these are the conversations that we have, and because it's a group program, there's a lot of cross-pollination of ideas that takes place. There's accountability that takes place. We create a buddy system. We have a mastermind. All of these things are designed to help and support the business owner to start generating cash as opposed to just managing cash.
So one thing I find quite refreshing about your work is you split the company just into 3 areas. Can you share those 3 areas with us and why we split them into those 3?
See, I have been studying companies from various different angles, from what is taught in management schools, books that are written on the subject, seminars, workshops, training, coaching, all the rest of it. And I find that it's become a very complex subject. But business is simple. It's not very complex. And it starts becoming simple if you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to start applying physics to business. What do most people do? They apply philosophy to business, history to business, hypothesis to business, and best of all, best practice from larger companies. So it's like saying, I want to become very strong. So I go to the zoo and look for the strongest animal there, and I find, hey, the elephant is mighty and it's really strong. So let me start drinking elephant milk. Then I'm going to become very, very strong.
Right.
Not going to happen, brother. You might even die. So this is what people do, Sony Corporation, Microsoft, Apple. What are the best practices from those elephants? Let me start drinking those, putting them in my organization. Nothing works.
Right.
Now, if you start applying physics to business, then you can imagine your business in 3 zones. Zone number 1 is selling. Zone number 2 is executing. And zone number 3 is collecting. So marketing and selling is zone 1. Then you execute with your teams and make sure that there's no wastage there. And then the last is invoicing and collecting. When you visualize your business in just these 3 parts, you can start visualizing how everything is flowing, where are the bottlenecks, and where innovations need to come into existence, and all of these come into the realm of physics. You don't get confused, you don't go off track, there are no great theories to work with. It's very simple. It's like saying driving a car is very simple. It's a complex machine, but it's very, very simple. If you have fuel, you can drive. If you have air pressure, your car is functional. If you are driving safely without creating an accident, you will go from place A to place B. It's very, very simple. A complex machine like a car, they made foolproof and idiot proof. What have we done with businesses? We made them so complex.
Yeah.
Let's simplify it. Selling, executing, collecting. Where is the bottleneck today? A strength of the chain is equal to the strength of its weakest link. In one of these is your weakest link today. Is selling your weak link? Is executing your weak link? Is collecting your weak link? And go into that and see what you need to do to fix it. Once you fix that, the other one will then become the weakest link. You'll always have one of these is going to be your weakest link. And you'll keep on spiraling up and going up. But it becomes so simple. It's not complicated. Selling, executing, collecting, and we're done.
So I like that you've really simplified things for the CEO, that there's only 3 things that the company needs to do to be successful. Can you share those 3 things with us?
Number 1 is innovation. Number 2 is constraints. And number 3 is pivotal assets. So innovation in its purest form is to identify needs of your target audience which are not satisfied. So these unsatisfied needs, if you are able to create a product or service that can fulfill these unsatisfied needs, let's call that innovation. As you start focusing on innovation from this perspective, the probability of success of your innovation starts to shoot up. The worldwide average of all innovations is only 17% success. But the moment you shift to the outcome that your target audience is trying to achieve through your product or service, because they're buying your product or service to get a job done. And they measure the success of that through outcomes that they want to achieve. And if they are not able to achieve those outcomes, then your product or service leaves them with dissatisfaction. So the idea is very, very simple. The idea is to find out what are the outcomes that your target audience is trying to achieve through buying your product or service. There's a job that they're trying to do for which they buy your product or service, and in that they're seeking these outcomes. And once you get that list of outcomes, and then you find out which of these outcomes are very important for them and they're not at all satisfied through either your product or service or through your competitor's product or services, now you have a tangible set of very few opportunities. These are called opportunities. And when you now create very simple innovations, these innovations start to work at 80% plus probability of success. So focusing on innovations from this approach is the first principle that I work with business owners. The second principle is the physics. The physics of business is very simple. The philosophy is just one line. The strength of a chain is equal to the strength of the weakest link. And there's no point in strengthening all the links of the chain. If you can find the weakest link and strengthen it, the load carrying capacity of that chain just got increased. In every system, there is a weakest link. It's called a bottleneck. And if you are improving non-bottleneck elements of your business, it's not going to help you increase the throughput, the output, the success. Because all of that is governed by the capacity of the bottleneck. So the idea is to find the bottleneck in every single area. And we look at business in only three areas: sales, execution, and collections. And find out, first of all, which of these three is your bottleneck, and within that, what is the bottleneck. And once you start solving that bottleneck, the throughput, the output, the success starts to grow. So that's the second principle that we work with business owners, is to help them identify the bottlenecks in their business and solve it, so it simplifies things. Their resources are very beautifully utilized. There's no wastage there. The third comes from thinking of assets as what grows over time. So there are two kinds of assets. You have plug and play assets, and you have assets that grow over time. So for example, if you go and buy a computer, that's a plug and play asset. You can just go and buy as many computers as you want and bring them into your company. But the designer, takes time for his design skills to develop, and the design skills that match your organizational standards, that takes time. And that asset which lives inside the designer is what makes the work effortless. So we work with business owners and ask them to identify up to 30 pivotal assets in their business, and then we ask them to vote on what is the current score on a scale of 0 to 10. Mm-hmm. And invariably I've found across different continents, different businesses, different classifications, that the average score on these 30 comes to around 3 on 10. It's shocking. Wow. It's absolutely shocking. And once they see that, then they start putting action plans in place to improve that score. And as the score starts going to 3, 4, 5, 6, the moment it goes 8 plus in these top 30 pivotal assets, there's an effortlessness that comes into the business. And people don't seem to realize that, all the time they're expediting. They're trying to push things into the system. Well, take time off, work on your business, identify where the bottlenecks are, identify areas of unmet needs so you can innovate, identify what are the pivotal assets that need to come into existence. And when you balance these three, your business starts to work. And it's not rocket science. It's just a question of pausing, working on your business, and applying simple principles of physics, and then you start seeing the magic happen.
So I think many CEOs have gone to seminars, read the books, they've got these ideas of how to grow the business, and then they take that idea back to their team, and there's like this struggle and effort to get the team on board and to help the CEO implement these ideas. How have you overcome that in your work?
First of all, let's examine this very interesting dynamic. Here is a very ambitious business owner, ambitious CEO, who all the time is scouting around for what's going to give him that edge, what's going to give him competitive advantage, what's going to get his business up to the next level and accelerating and growing and scaling up. And then he comes across this beautiful framework, theory, approach, and then he comes and he talks with all that enthusiasm to his core team, and they're all looking at him with eyes glazed over, and they're wondering, who did our CEO meet? Which program did he attend? Which book did he read? What is the flavor of the month? And then the guy sitting next to him nudges him and says, don't worry, this too will pass. It'll take a little while. This is short-lived. Till our CEO reads the next book or attends the next workshop or the next program. And this is a dynamic that's happening all the time. Yeah. So what we do in the work is we bring in the core team with the CEO, and everybody starts grappling in just 3 areas: sales, execution, and cash. and where is the bottleneck, what do we need to work with, and how are you going to take your business to the next level. And when it is a collective conversation, as opposed to the CEO going somewhere, maybe to Mars, and learning something and bringing it back to Earth and trying to implement it in his organization, and they say, hey, what's this alien stuff that you got? Instead of that, we have the whole team co-create a way forward, and they are so invested, it's of the people, for the people, by the people, that there's no resistance in working with implementing, what's going to take the business to the next level. And as we start working these three areas, we work with innovation, which helps them to find the unmet needs of their customers and create very small and simple solutions. Because innovation is defined as unmet needs and solving those unmet needs. The second is constraints. We help them find where are the bottlenecks in the system and what do they need to do to exploit those bottlenecks to increase the throughput. And then the last are, key pivotal assets that they need to work on developing. Maybe it is their team, maybe it's the scorecard. There are so many things. Maybe it's just their lead generation process, maybe it's the marketing funnel, maybe it's the sales funnel. So on and so forth. These asset stocks, as they're called, once they start becoming more robust, the business starts to grow. So the core team starts to taste success very, very fast. And once you taste success, you become a winning team, and everybody wants to be part of the winning team, and the whole dynamic shifts. And it's no longer a case of the CEO who's trying to find, some way to make his business grow, and every silver bullet that he brings to the organization gets swallowed dry, not even with a glass of water, by his core team, and then nothing sort of seems to work. So this is what we found to be the most effective way of growing the business. Is you come into a program where all the heavyweight lifting the program does for you in aligning your core team, and everybody works on principles that have been tested over time, as opposed to new things that you're trying to put in. And it's simple, and it starts to work.
So one thing I observed watching the workshop is you work with generics. So one company cannot have a solution that only works for them. It has to benefit everybody in the room. Why is that?
If you look in nature, for example, a river in every part of the world, irrespective of the country, irrespective of the region, irrespective of the weather, has a generic, which is it starts somewhere up in the mountains, which is the source of the river. There are all these tributaries which add water into the river, and then there are the distributaries from where the water leaves, and then there is a phenomena of evaporation, of percolation, of damming, till one fine day the water that started from the source goes and meets the sea, and that's a generic. Similarly, if you look at the way the sea behaves off the different coasts of different countries, there's a generic wave, comes in, comes out, goes out, comes in, goes out, and so on and so forth. So similarly, in businesses, there are generics, and as you start working with those generics, things start to work. So for example, if you look at a car, irrespective of the model of the car, all the cars have tires, engines, steering wheel, accelerators, and all the rest of it. And these are the generics. And if you don't have the generic in your car will not work, irrespective of how expensive or fancy the car is, or how simple or inexpensive it is. So what typically happens in businesses is that when they sit alone by themselves with a core team, there is a sense that we are very different, we are very unique, our business is unique, it's all there, of course it's unique, and that differentiates you. But the uniqueness comes in after all the generics are handled. If the generics are not handled, the uniqueness falls flat. I mean, just think of a car. Let's look at Rolls-Royce. The Rolls-Royce is very unique, but it doesn't have two tires. It has only two tires. It's not going to work. It's got to satisfy the laws of the generics. And what I notice working with businesses is that that's where the biggest opportunity lies, is to find the generics, set them right in your business first. So when we work with different business owners, different teams, we start exploring the generics. And how do we explore the generics? It's a very simple process. So we have a landscaping company, we got a shipping company, we got a music supply company, we've got an energy company. What's common? The common is that there is a core team, there is a business owner, they all sit together and we open up a conversation and we look for an articulation that is generic for all these companies. And we start collecting these generics, and then everybody starts working with those generics, implementing them in the organization, and things just start to work. And then on top of that, they can do all the fancy, differentiation, the positioning, and all those pieces, which are also required, to get a premium, to have a differentiated business. But after the generics, it's like an aeroplane. If an aeroplane does not have wings that helps it to lift and an engine that overcomes the thrust, that aeroplane is not going to be able to fly. So you need to get the generics in place to be able to make something work, and all these generics come from physics. So physics is about finding generics and then applying them to whatever that you're doing. You call them laws, you call them principles, you call them practices, irrespective of what they are and where they sit in the hierarchy. Unless you are consistent and apply the laws of physics, nothing is going to work. So generics are very, very basic, very fundamental, and nobody's paying attention to them. Everybody wants to differentiate. Everybody wants to be unique. Hey, hello, fix your generics first. Then the uniqueness comes. The uniqueness by itself, without the generics, it's not going to work.
So one question I want to ask you is about commodity businesses. They can't really play with price anymore to acquire customers. How do they differentiate themselves in a market and start, becoming a leader in their space?
So the word commodity seems to apply to many businesses in the same kind of space, which are undifferentiated from each other. And these businesses, for them to grow, for them to be more profitable, they need to have something that is unique. Otherwise, they are replaceable. Potato is a potato is a potato. Doesn't really matter. Unless you're a gourmet chef and you can make out the difference, but that's another story. So, in every single business, there will always be an unmet customer need, which if you are able to uncover and if you are able to capitalize on that, then your business, which is otherwise quote unquote a commodity, suddenly starts getting an advantage, a differentiated advantage, a competitive advantage. So for example, there's a company that deals with these little pebbles and rocks that they use in concrete for buildings. And all the other 8 companies around them get the same pebbles from the same mountain quarries. Nothing is differentiated. It's the same damn thing. From the same rock, it's crushed and brought to that level, and they're graded. So these guys, this company, started looking at where can they differentiate themselves. They wanted to brand these unbrandable commodities like little pebbles and rocks which go into concrete. It's not a big deal, right? So they started examining, and what they found is that these large construction sites have a problem that when they place an order for, let's say, 20 trucks to be supplied for a concrete slab that needs to be laid, that if there is a delay and only 7-8 trucks come and the other trucks get delayed for whatever reason, is going to spoil their entire plan and perhaps even create cracks in their concrete and all the rest of it. So this was one thing that the owner picked up, and he created an offer that if we are late, all the pebbles are on us. We will not invoice you. And then he goes and tells his team, hey guys, if we miss out, if we are late, you're the guys who are going to pay for the trucks.
Wow.
So he set that up as so it was a double whammy, right? And sure enough, he started picking up all the business from all the big, construction sites. So the point is, the moment you start searching, you will find something that can differentiate you. And in that area, when you create your product or service or an offering or some innovation, is going to help you to differentiate and grow your business, which is you're no longer a commodity. You start being something that people value, and once people start valuing you, it's a brand. It doesn't matter whether you're branding it at the level of the product or at the level of the service or the level of your offering. It doesn't really matter. And that is what we work with business owners to help them find where they can create advantage for themselves, for which their customers are willing to pay a small premium. Now, the small premium is very important. It's not how much money you can make with a small premium, but if your customer is willing to pay a small premium, it's clearly demonstrated that you're creating more value for them than your competitors. So that's what we work on.
So a lot of business owners and CEOs, they're frustrated, they're complaining a lot when they come home from work. They're saying, my guys, they're just not doing what they're supposed to. I've made it clear. I don't know what to do to get them to, follow through. Why do they have this experience?
If I was present there and listening to them, I would audio record them, and then I'd play it back to them and say, look how funny you sound when you whine like that. And every single day you seem to be whining. So when you whine, you're operating from a place that creates that whine. And the place that you're operating from is a place called expecting. Then you got these, people who you're counting on, depending on, whether it's in your core team or whether it's your supervisors or whether it's just the people who are executing, and you're expecting them to perform. But the law is very simple. You never get what you expect. You only get what you inspect. So the moment I hear a business owner or a CEO, as I like to call it, whining, first of all, I say to them, you're whining, and they go, oh, what? What did you just say? And I say, you're whining. Yeah. And once they get the joke, right? After a while, you kind of clown around a little bit, and basically it's just about opening up that space for them to get that they become world-class whiners. And whining and expecting go together. So once they start shifting and they start, operating from inspecting, now the next question is, what is there to inspect? And if you are going to be inspecting last month's performance after the month is over, then you're inspecting lagging indicators. You might as well not inspect. So inspecting and leading indicators go together. So at the end of the first week, what are the indicators that when you start inspecting suggest to you that end of the month, end of the quarter, you're likely to miss your target? And as you start inspecting first weekend, second week, third week, and you start looking at what are the corrections you need to put in place, those corrections become obvious to you only if you're inspecting them. inspecting the leading indicators, not the lagging indicators. So whining and expecting go together. Whining and inspecting lagging indicators go together. So if you want to stop whining and you want to make your people productive, start inspecting upstream, the leading indicators. Now, in the leading indicators, you got to spend time in meditating to find out what is the key pivotal leading indicator that's going to, give you an indication. So, for example, if you are, in any creative kind of a business, the leading indicator is the pitch or the proposal that you created, which you started engaging with a client, and then that proposal would get classified into high probability, mid probability, low probability, and with experience you are able to classify them. So the number of pitches in the high probability in the end of the first week will give you an indication of how that month is going to pan out, how that quarter is going to pan out. So if you start measuring that and having parameters that, look, I need to have 5 pitches going on at whatever is the average price, then one of them is going to convert. If I don't have 5, I'm not going to get the conversion. If I have 10, I'll get 2. So that's the kind of math I find business owners are not doing. It's very simple. Start looking upstream and start inspecting. And as you start inspecting, everybody around you starts getting trained in producing all these leading indicators successfully, which then help them to achieve the results downstream. So that's basically what it is about. Stop whining, stop expecting, start inspecting and inspecting leading indicators.